Thank you very much for giving up some of your Tuesday night to spend some time with myself and Mr. Duncan. This evening, we are going to go through some really key information for yourselves as Year 10 parents as we move forward into the Key Stage 2 journey. I'd first like to introduce myself. My name is Mr. Antrobus, and I am a Key Stage 4 assistant principal, and my job is solely focusing on the outcomes of all our Key Stage 4 students, ensuring that they leave us with the best possible academic outcomes. So, the agenda for tonight's meeting, we're going to start just going over the importance of the outcomes and what that means for your son or daughter over the next few years. Mr. Duncan is then going to talk to you about attendance and punctuality, home learning, and the exam timetable for the mid-year mock exams for Year 10. I'm then going to talk to you about how we utilize the data that we get from the Year 10 mock exams, utilizing something called color groups and rank ordering. We're then going to look at how to support your son or daughter with effective revision strategies, and then finally end with a quick note about exam access arrangements and how they work here at the John Roan School. So without further ado, let's get going. And the reason that we called this meeting tonight is because we understand the importance of parental engagement. And parental engagement, especially at such an early stage as at the start of Key Stage 4, when your son and daughter has began their GCSE journey, can have such a huge impact on the outcomes that they achieve when they're in Year 11. As you can see here, when we look at a meta-analysis of over 100 studies across the nation, effective parental engagement, where the parents, teachers, and students are all on the same page, has over 4 months of difference in that student's progress. An absolutely huge amount of difference that can be made just by being really, really clear on what our expectations are as a school, how you can support as a parent, and also what we expect from our students. Now, obviously, the first stepping stone to great parental engagement is this meeting tonight, and you'll be hearing from myself and Mr. Duncan much more frequently as we approach the mock exam series about how you can support your son and daughter. And at the John Roan School, we have a very, very clear mission statement that the John Roan School ensures that all students achieve the highest possible academic outcomes and develop into responsible citizens so they're able to lead happy and fulfilled lives. Now, as we move into Key Stage 4, the part I've highlighted in yellow becomes more and more important. We know academic outcomes are how students will be judged in the future, so we must ensure support is in place now. We must constantly challenge children to do what they think they can't. We know that Year 10 is an incredibly, incredibly talented year group. We must also challenge children and challenge our students to work hard and always be at their best and achieve the best results they possibly can. And as a school, we believe that this is our professional and moral responsibility to do this because that is what is best for our students. And when we look at it, we know that unfortunately, how we judge today's society is mostly based on the exam grades that students are going to get at the end of Year 11. And these are going to be the currency used by sixth forms, colleges, workplaces for the future of their lives. Therefore, gaining strong grades in their GCSEs truly is a life-changing opportunity. And when students achieve the best possible outcomes, doors remain open for them for the rest of their life, allowing them to study what they want, where they want, and ultimately live that happy and successful life that we want for all of our students. Now, this data is really, really clear with what it shows. And it shows that, well, we know modern life is challenging and modern life is expensive. Students that have a higher academic qualification are likely to earn higher in their future lives, with students at higher education earning a greater volume of money than students with no qualifications at all. We can also see that the percentage of unemployment decreases as the academic achievement also increases. So it's incredibly important that students are really, really prepared for their future life. It's not just about today, tomorrow, and the next 2 years. It's about what they can go on to for the rest of their lives. And the next slide also identifies this as well. We can see the same trend on this graph. The higher levels of education lead to higher earnings and low unemployment. Getting the grades over the next 2 years is simply not about Ofsted, United Learning, or the John Roan School. It's actually about making sure that your son and daughter is set up for the rest of their lives. Now, at the John Roan School, we know that it's not about intelligence, and we know that every child in Year 10 can succeed, and that is a message that we give them every single day. And actually, what it's about revision and practice, making sure that we don't give up and we're resilient. It's about belief and having that confidence that actually every single student can achieve to the best of their ability with us. And it's also about attendance, making sure that you are in every day on time. And we say this because we know that it's our responsibility at the John Roan School to get your child the best possible outcomes, because those outcomes come with life-changing opportunities. However, we also ask that with the parent engagement, is your responsibility to ensure that your child attends school every single day on time. And in Key Stage 4, when we're gearing up for our mock assessments in January, this is an absolute must. So I'm now going to hand over to Mr. Duncan, and Mr. Duncan is going to talk about attendance and punctuality in Year 10 and the expectations regarding that.
Thank you, Mr. Antrobus. So good evening, everybody. I'm really pleased, obviously, to be speaking to you, and it's obviously quite exciting we're now at this stage of your children's lives in Year 10 and thinking about our GCSEs. And I must say that so far, the option process has gone really, really well. I think our students have and your children have seamlessly got into their new options with minimal sort of asking about changes to subject areas and things like that. So I'm really, really proud and really pleased to see how well they've adapted to the Key Stage 4 curriculum, coming from the Key Stage 3 curriculum. Mr. Antrobus. Thank you, sir. So there's a nice little graph there that just sort of illustrates really attendance over the year. So this is from September to July, and I think it's quite important when you then start looking at the actual days missed. Now I'm keenly aware of all of our students in our year group, and I know that some of our students do have medical needs, and I'm aware that that may then make the 100% attendance figure a little bit more difficult and challenging to reach. However, I think it's still a good indication for the vast majority of all of us to then to see, 4 days missed from school, that will give us, 98%. 7 days missed from school drops us down to 96. And then you see how quickly, the percentages do drop, even though when you think of 9 school days over a course of a year, it does eventually then end up with 95% attendance and obviously below. Um, Again, there's always a lots of context to do with attendance, but currently our year group is one of the lowest attendance of the school. And I'm just quite anxious where obviously this is our first set of mock exams we're now going into. We've always been used to, mid-year exams, end of year exams. We're now talking about GCSE mocks. So I really want all of our students to do as well as they possibly can. And I won't want there to be any gaps in anyone's learning purely due to their attendance. Thank you, sir. And as you can see, there's a direct correlation again with, good school attendance and then obviously equaling the amount of grades that, our students can then receive. So obviously the more likely you're in school, the higher your grades will become. And obviously the less time you're in school, then obviously the lower your grades will also then become. So it is a direct correlation. On a weekly basis, I am sharing our continuity of learning to our Year 10 students. So if anyone is absent, and again, I appreciate it's in the cold winter months, so the flu's going around a little bit more. But I still don't want our students who are not in school to have the barrier of just because you're not in school, you're also not getting the information from lessons. Now, there's no replacement for a teacher. We went through COVID, we had Teams lessons and everything else like that, but it's never quite the same as being in a lesson, engaging with your peers, your classmates, and the teacher. So again, that graph just kind of correlates and illustrates that quite well. Which then brings me quite nicely onto our home learning as well. So, as I say, I do share out the continuity of learning for all of our students. So, if you are absent, but again, every single one of us all gets home learning from all of our core subjects on a weekly basis. So, I feel it'll be really quite important just to remind you of the key days that homework is then due for. Thank you, Mr. Antrobus. So obviously, the main core subjects, maths, English, and science. Now we're all on Sparks now, so no longer do you have to sort of navigate through a number of different platforms. And the days you see next to it, so English and maths on a Thursday and science on a Wednesday. Now that means that's the hand-in day. So that's an 8 o'clock hand-in deadline. Now for me, I don't really like the idea of our students trying to sort of rush homework and trying to get it completed at say 7:59 on a Wednesday or a Thursday morning. But again, it's just an indication. So when you're at home, like Mr. Antrobus if we're all sort of speaking from the same hymn sheet, if you then know, right, on Thursdays, maths and English are both then going to be due. Wednesday night, Wednesday mornings, science is due. That way you can sort of keep checking in with your child, seeing how they're getting on. Again, just to consolidate that learning, because lessons are brilliant. That's what they're there for. Our teachers are great, but then the home learning aspect is then for our students to consolidate what they've learned in their lessons, and they can then apply it individually and independently at home, again to almost replicate what it's going to be like when it comes to their exams as well. So just some key dates. So Thursdays for maths and English, and Wednesday mornings this is for science. Thank you, sir. And then that brings me on then to the exam timetable again. So we had this when we was in year 7. I think it was a little bit early, so we've not really had it ever since. But this is really going to be quite important. So our mock timetable is over a course of 2 weeks. So for some of our students, they're going to have back-to-back exams in the morning and in the afternoon. Whereas some students, depending on their subject, they may just have one in the morning or one in the afternoon. But obviously, all the core subjects, all of our students will be all together, whether it may be in a sports hall or whether it may be in smaller rooms, and Mr. Antrobus will be speaking a little bit more about the access arrangement plans. But again, that's something that myself and Miss Masson are meeting about tomorrow, so we can go through the students that I'm aware of, and maybe Miss Masson's also aware of, just to make sure we've got the right support in place. But as you can see, it starts on, well, I've always said it starts on the 12th, but our actual first exam is on the 13th, which is Tuesday, and that's English. And in the afternoon, you've then got history. On a Wednesday, we've got combined science, and we've also then got triple where biology and chemistry will be taking place, and so on and so forth, and business and all the rest of it. We do have opportunities for catch-ups, which would be the second week Wednesday, and again, I'm sure there'll probably be a further catch-up just in the event that something happens on that particular Wednesday. Crucially, just to mention, our BTEC subjects also have all day exams. So that's health and social care. Sport will also be all day as well. So that's just something to factor in. And even speaking of health and social care, Miss Sterling Smith was really, really proud and really couldn't speak highly enough of her particular class that started their formal part of their assessment yesterday. So she was really, really proud, and I made sure to speak to all of our students, and she did name drop one of our students as well who got a star of the lesson as well. So again, it's all starting to drive up momentum. Again, we're in a really good position, we're in a really good place, and obviously long may that continue. But naturally, we're all in it together. So if there's anything that we can help navigate for you, for your child, please just always reach out. We're always here. And again, I really appreciate your engagement this evening. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Duncan. That was really, really nice and clear. I think one thing that I'd just like to echo regarding exams is the importance of punctuality around them. When it comes to real GCSE examinations, we are set a very stringent set of protocols that we have to follow by JCQ, and that states when students can start the exam. So all of our AM exams start at 8:30 AM. So that'll be students go straight from roll call that they're expected to by latest 8:25 to start their exam at 8:30. Afternoon exams all take place at 1:30. So again, they will go straight from lunch and go to their exams there. Now, based around this timetable, students will also be in their normal lessons. So it's absolutely important that every single day attendance matters, and making sure that your child is in at the correct time and ready to do that exam. The catch-up sessions are there to support students that have had a illness that is unavoidable, but we usually do ask that during exam season, even if your child is feeling a little bit under the weather, that you do send them in, and myself, Mr. Duncan, will make sure that we support them to do the exam to make sure that they're getting that progress, but then also on the terms of well-being, we will look at if they should go home after their assessment. And the reason we do exams is, well, they're about two things. It's about allowing our students to practice, but also allowing our students to make progress. And we know that the GCSE pathway is not a linear line, and there will be times when students find it tough and students find it difficult. But that's why, with the fantastic support of Mr. Duncan as head of year, our pastoral leader, Miss Kaiser, and myself, you have a really, really skilled and experienced team of staff there to support your child through their exams. And actually, year 10 are in a great position because at present they currently have four opportunities to actually practice their skills over their Key Stage 4 journey. Two this year, with the first one being in January, the final one being at the end of the year, and then two next year in their year 11, the first one being November, with our year 11s currently sitting their mock exams, and the second one being February. So there is plenty of time to practice these exams. Now, we know that after exams, we're going to give feedback to students and they're going to have chance to adapt their answers and make sure that we're filling in their gaps and knowledge. And as we're doing more exams, increasing the amount of content and papers, students become more familiar with the questions they're being asked. And that overall leads to increasing exam confidence, but also what we know as exam stamina. There are some papers, for example, English literature, that is 2 hours and 15 minutes long. And by practicing this over and over again over the next 2 years, we know that we can build the stamina for students being successful. However, this is really, really important because what we like to hear, or what we hear a lot around the school, is, oh, sir, it's only mock exams. I'm going to pull it out for the real exams. But actually, the most successful students that leave us with the best GCSE grades at the end of year 11s are the ones that take each set of exams really seriously. They prepare early and they build on the feedback from their last set of exams. And if anything, that is the advice that I would ask you to take away today is preparing early is the best way to combat all of the problems that come with exams, whether that be anxiety and stress, whether that be trouble with long-term retention of information, or trouble with the content of the information. Starting early allows us to avoid those problems. So I'm now going to move into how we use the data. And this is really, really important because after the first round of mock exams in January, your child will be given what we know as a colour group, and they will also be given a rank order. So I'm going to talk through what they mean on a student by student basis. Now, both of these measures are here to promote our 7 year journey, and we know that students that come with us in year 7 often like to stay with us for the full 7 years, actually graduating onto our sixth form and then moving on from our sixth form to some of the best institutions around the world. And these processes that we put in place allow us to put interventions in the correct area so any student that wants to stay with us has the ability to do so. So in terms of colour groupings, there are a number of colour groups in which we assign different students to. And this will be emailed home to you by myself after the round of mock exams. And the three colour groups that we want all students to aspire to are either the gold, the silver, or the bronze. Sorry, the green. And that is because these colour groups are students that are all attaining exactly where they should be. And they are being successful at the boundaries we are predicting them to be at. And this means that major universities, employers, and colleges are going to be looking for students that are in these three groups. So the gold group is students that are achieving five or more seven pluses, and that they are also on target for the rest of their exams. The silver group is students that are achieving 5+ or more in five or more subjects, and again on target. And the green group is students that are achieving a 4 in English and maths, which is on or above their target. Now you can see here that there is a huge correlation between the colour group and also the percentage attendance. So then percentages are percentages of our year 11 that left last year in these colour groupings. So students in the gold group had an attendance of 98.12%, in the silver group nearly 97%, and in the green group 95.4%. So we know that being in these groups is strongly linked to attendance. Another colour group that students could be in is the blue group. Now, the blue group is there because the students are showing academic ability in their basic subjects, which is their English and their maths, and they're actually achieving a grade 5 in these subjects. However, they are not achieving as well in their option subjects. So this may lead to some options beginning to close at post 16 places. Some colleges, some sixth forms, require students to achieve a higher grade in subjects that they would like to study. For example, the John Rowan sixth form asks for a grade 7 if you want to study A-level maths. Now, if your child ends up in the blue group, it is absolutely vital that they look at spreading their effort and their revision out among all of their subjects. Whether they study Spanish, geography, history, they need to spread their time out more effectively. We then go on to these three groups, the yellow, the orange, and the pink. Now, students in these groups are in a position where they are close to or have the ability to achieve the outcomes they need, which is either a 4+ in English and maths or 5+ in English and maths. Now, students in the yellow group, would have achieved one grade 5 in either English or maths. However, they've not achieved grade 5 in both of them. Students in the orange group are targeted to achieve a grade 5 in English and maths, but currently will not be achieving a grade 5 in either of them. And students in the pink group would be targeted to achieve a grade 4 in English or maths, but currently not doing them in both. Now, if your child ends up in one of these groups, these are absolutely vital because these are what we call our crossover students. These are ones that, in order to leave with a really high set of academic outcomes, they need to focus their revision geared towards a subject that they are not gaining either the grade 5 or the grade 4 in. Now, if students don't achieve a grade 4 at the end of their year 11, it is actually a statutory requirement at the minute that they will resit with that with their post 16 provider, both English and maths. Now, the resit rates for passing English and maths are incredibly low. Students that resat English and maths last year actually only achieved a pass rate of 23% in English and 19% in maths. So the best chance to pass English and maths is this year. We then move on to the purple group, and the purple group are students that across their whole suite of subjects, if they could gain one grade more in all their subjects, then this would lead to opening more doors and future opportunities for them. We know that every single grade gained by students leads to a higher possible outcome in their future life, which will then have a tangible difference for their life. We then finally come to the red group. Now, if your child is placed in the red group, this is where we talk about urgent action, and I would also be meeting you in person in school. Now, students in the red group are students that currently, with their current data, they would not be they would be at risk of leaving the John Rowan School without 5 GCSE results at a grade pass. Now, students in this group are going to have real difficulties in opening doors for their future, and therefore will have less opportunity to study college courses that they should wish. But also, when they go to their further life, they will sort of be faced with lower incomes and lower earnings as an adult. Now, we can see here again that attendance has a huge role to play. Students that were in the red group last year had an average attendance of 90.5%. So again, like Mr. Duncan said, it really does have an impact, and being in school every day is absolutely vital. Now, as I said at the start before I went through the coloured groups, these will be shared with you after we get the data from Mock 1. Now, these colour groups are also very dynamic, and every time that your child does a set of assessments, these colour groups will change. And what we ideally want to see is students moving through those groups in order to strive to be in the gold, the silver, or the green by the time they leave us in year 11. The colour groupings also allow us to put in interventions where they're really, really needed for our students, but they also allow students to see the impact that their results will have on their future. We're also going to use the data differently this year in terms of rank order. Now, when we talk about rank order, it's really important that you understand the two key rank orders that you're going to receive after this round of mock exams. You will receive an academic rank. Now, the academic rank or the attainment rank tells you where your son or daughter sits within the context of our year group. Now, we do this really importantly because GCSE results are done in a very, very similar way. While students often see that GCSEs are done within classes or within schools, it's important to actually note that when the GCSEs are sat, there are around 330,000 pupils in the UK also sit in them. And actually, where the grades come from is determined almost on a rank order basis. So by seeing where your son and daughter sits in the year group, you'll be able to see how they actually compare in terms of their average grade with other students. You'll also receive an attendance rank, and the attendance rank is similar to the attainment rank. However, apart from looking at the academic achievement, it will look at the attendance to school and it'll be where your son or daughter sits, again, within the context of their year group in year 10. Now, in the summer, after we've done the second round of assessments, we will introduce a third rank order, and this rank order reflects progress that students are going to make between the Mock 1 in January and the Mock 2 at the end of the year. Now, these rank orders will be shared with yourself and will enable us to direct interventions where we can be most impactful for all of our students. They also allow students to take account for their own progress and see where they are. Now, it's really important to note that this data isn't shared publicly. It's shared with you on the report that goes home, so you have a clearer understanding of where your son or daughter lies within the year. Now, importantly, with the use of data in our school, it allows us to track the progress over time. It also allows us to have accountability within our school for certain departments and teachers and making sure that we are providing the best education for all students within our school because we know that that is what they deserve. And like we said before, it also allows us to ensure that the right interventions are in place for every student. That includes setting, and it also includes extra intervention sessions that we placed on for students as they move through year 10 into year 11. Now we've talked about how we use the data, it's also important to see how we and how you as parents can have a real impact on your child's data when it comes to exams. Now we know that exams can be scary in terms of sitting them in the sports hall as a real exam, and there can also be a lot of content for the exams. And that's why we ask that revision should be starting for exams now. And over the next few slides, I'm going to give you just a few really key strategies to help you revise with your son and daughter at home and to make sure that revision is effective and proactive, and actually it's revision that's going to help them. Now, it's really important that we talk about revision, and that's because revision is based on facts that we know from cognitive science. Now, we know that even if you leave information that you've learned in just one day, then you would lose 20% of that information. Now, if you leave the information that you've just learned for 3 days, then that continues to lose 40% of the information. So, to put that into context, if your child had a lesson on Monday morning, by tomorrow, period one, they would have lost 40% of that information that they've been taught. So, if we think about that in terms of the content they're learning over a whole year, and actually in Key Stage 4, the whole 2 years, it's really, really important that we're continuously going over and reviewing that information. Now, if they don't do that, if they don't go home and they don't engage in extra work, they don't engage in extra revision, and they don't engage with the home learning platforms, then actually our students are creating huge gaps in their knowledge. And those gaps will have to be caught up at another point, which will actually extend the amount of time that they have to revise for, or will make some of the questions in their exam actually inaccessible to them. So, how can we support in reducing this memory gap? Well, in school, we do it every single day. Our lesson is designed to take this into account. We revisit content regularly, and at the start of every lesson, we do a do now, which is a retrieval task. And that again links into the importance of attendance every day. If your child is missing the first 40 minutes of a school day, they're actually going to miss that retrieval of their lesson one. And again, that's going to lead to gaps forming in their knowledge. And there are also a whole wealth of strategies that we ask you to do at home, such as revision flashcards. Revision flashcards are absolutely amazing as a revision strategy. And what they are is they're made by students themselves. And on one side, they have a question about something that they've learned that day. For example, state the equation for photosynthesis. And then the reverse of that flashcard is simply the answer. So you'd see carbon dioxide plus water goes to glucose and oxygen. Now, these revision flashcards are used as a really, really low stakes quizzing, and that allows students to just recall key facts and core knowledge really, really quickly and really, really easily. Now, best practice with the revision flashcards is actually that a student would come home after their day at school, they might have something to eat, they might have a little break, and then they would actually sit down and do revision flashcards for their day at school that they've just had. And that would ensure that there's no gaps in their knowledge because it's fresh in their memory, but it would also ensure that in 1, 2, 3 days' time, they can come back and they can quiz themselves on that knowledge. What we've also found works really well over the last few years is when families actually get engaged with this revision flashcard technique. And we've seen some families say to us, well, actually, we do them at home while I'm cooking dinner. And as we're cooking dinner, we'll do 20 flashcards and we'll make sure that we go through some of those core content. Now, building those flashcards up now is a great opportunity because that means that through the next 2 years of academic learning, which your child will go through, they are going to have a whole bank of revision flashcards ready to go for their exams. It also means, like we said earlier, that there are no gaps in their knowledge being created that they are going to struggle with later on. The second revision strategy is called a summary sheet. Now, these are usually done at the end of topics. And these summary sheets are all about processing the information into smaller, more manageable chunks, using something called dual coding, which is using images instead of words, and also making sure that they are only doing the absolute core knowledge. Now, at the end of each topic, if they can condense that whole topic onto one A4 sheet, they then have to do something that we call look, cover, write, and check. So they would read the sheet a few times, making sure that they practice the information on there. You could even take it off them and test them on some key points. They would then turn that sheet over or cover it over, and they would try and recreate that sheet on a brand new piece of paper. Once they've done that, they would go back over and they would check the sheet with the original that they've made and making sure they've got all of the key points on there. Now, if they've missed any of the points, they would add this in a different colored pen. Usually we use like red pen or green pen, and this would identify where there are gaps in their knowledge. And then they would continue doing this process of look, cover, write, and check until they can recreate their whole revision on a page. And this would mean that that has then been stored in long-term memory. Now, it's really, really important when these summary sheets have been made that we are actively using them to write. Something like look, cover, write, check means that our brain is actually engaging in that revision and it's not just reading the information, because reading the information is actually a really, really poor revision strategy. Another revision strategy that some students really like is something called dual coding. And dual coding is where students turn things like methodologies, things like stories into images instead. And the images can be nice and simple, but it just allows them to change the written information into pictures. And then they can visualize those pictures in their head. So when it comes to exam, they can rewrite out the method. Now, again, this works as very similar to the cover sheet that we just did before, is when we do these, it's important that when you've got all the pictures, that the student can then recall that step by step. So they might draw the pictures out and write the sentence next to them, and they would continue to do that until they can do that without any prompting. And then another one is past papers. Now, past papers are absolutely amazing, and they can be found on many, many websites, and teachers also direct you to them in the revision resources that I will share with you later on. However, these past papers are only beneficial if the student has actually revised all of the content and is confident with what they have learned. If they're not at that stage, then it is not beneficial to do a past paper because they are just identifying gaps that are already there. Now, once a past paper has been done in silence, in exam conditions, so that's no mobile phones, that's timed conditions, then it's also really, really important to self-assess that paper, either on their own with a mark scheme, but I do suggest that this is better done with an adult present because usually what we find is students are very, very generous with their own marking. Now, once they self-assess it, you should highlight any areas of weakness and then go back over and refocus revision on those gaps. Now, it's important to note that all of these revision resources and all these revision strategies are actually paper-based revision strategies. What we usually see, especially as we get to year 10 and year 11, is yes, there is a massive reliance on technology. However, we do know that revision can also be very, very beneficial without laptops and without computers. We are unfortunately the digital age where teenagers are very, very clever and very, very savvy on their laptops. And while it might look like they're doing revision, there might be YouTube videos playing or games playing in the background that are distracting them from their actual task. So we do suggest that with things like revision flashcards, with things like summary pages, they are done without any electronic devices. Now, proactive revision is also best done in certain conditions, and this is where we become very unpopular with students. We say that things like mobile phones, game consoles, and tellies are really, really distracting to students, and we don't use them in school for that reason. Instead, we ask that you create a space where they can have a silent revision strategy and they can focus on their own work without distraction. It's also important when we're doing proactive revision that we look at our things like healthy diet. Healthy diet really does support long-term retention and really ensures that students are healthy and happy as they're going through stressful times. It's also important that we look at physical exercise. We know that physical exercise boosts students' mood, reduces anxiety and reduces depression, and supports with overall mental well-being. So getting outside if the weather permits, or doing some sessions inside if you've got the space is really, really beneficial. It's also immensely important to continue with routines such as clubs and after school activities that students take part in because these provide a really, really welcome rest for students. And then finally, the alarm clock symbolizes having good routines. We often see that students come into exams very, very tired, and unfortunately, if they're very, very tired, they do not perform at their best. So having a really good set bedtime, but also a set time that they wake up, they get ready and they leave for school so that all of their morning routine is stress-free and that they are ready for the school day ahead of them. Now, it's also really, really important to plan time. And reason we ask to plan time is because actually by planning students' time and planning when they're going to do their home learning, when they're going to do the revision, and what they're going to revise, it actually means that they benefit from having more time in the end. And this is because instead of procrastinating, instead of deciding what they're going to do, having it on a timetable is really, really beneficial for them. Now, this resource will be available to all students printed out in a few weeks' time, but it will also be available online as well. And what I'm going to do with our resource, I'm going to email yourselves a link to the John Rowan SharePoint, and on there will be all of the Year 10 revision resources that we have that you can use with your son or daughter. Now, there is a caveat to this. These revision resources are on our SharePoint, so your son or daughter will need to log in with their John Rowan School account. All right, some students will say, oh, it's okay, we don't have access to it, but if they log in with their school account, they will all be there for you. But sitting down with them and working out day by day when they can do different things is really, really important to have a successful revision timetable. So the final thing I'm going to discuss is our exam access arrangements. Now, our exam access arrangements are an incredibly complex process, and Miss Masson, our Senko, is absolutely amazing at working through them, and she will support students through them. I'm just going to give you an overview of how that works, however, just so you're aware of what students will be faced with. So access arrangements are all about leveling the playing field. They don't give students an unfair advantage, and they're for students with specific and long-term difficulties. Now, the access arrangements that we put in place for exams must reflect the student's normal way of working and be firmly based on evidence of needs and not just their preference. So when we look at access arrangements, there are six main areas of needs that may indicate that they need an access arrangement. For example, number one, cognition and learning needs. So they are learning difficulties. Communication and interaction needs. So that might be speech and language. English as additional language needs. So that might be things like bilingual dictionaries. Sensory and or physical needs of how they access the exam. Social, emotional and mental health needs. Or speech, language and communication needs. And again, these will be dictated by us at school with our professional judgment, working with Mr. Duncan, myself, and the Senko. Now, to identify Year 10 students, over the next few weeks, Mr. Duncan and Ms. Masson will be considering who within the cohort will require specific exam access arrangements based on the identified substantial long-term difficulties. By the end of the term, if your child has access to exam access arrangements, you will receive an email communication, and that will explain to you the exam access arrangement that we will be granting students in their mocks based on what we feel is most appropriate to support their needs. Now, it's important to note here that all access arrangements are ultimately subject to approval by the JCQ. The JCQ is a Joint Council for Qualifications that govern all of our exams. Now, after the mocks, what we have to do is we have to send our final confirmation, and then that will get approval for us. Now, this timeline just outlines what I've said, and I hope that makes it really, really clear for how we look at exam access arrangements over the coming year. And like we said, it's important that we level the playing field for all students involved, and we will, of course, do the best we can for every student. Now, I wanted to just finish by having this on the slide, and it's because every year we talk about the class of, and I'm really, really excited that Year 10 at the start of their Key Stage 4 journey are going to be our class of 2027. And I'm sure with the support of yourselves at home, with Mr. Duncan, myself, and Miss Kaiser at school, and obviously our wealth of excellent teachers inside the John Rowan School, that we can have a really, really successful set of exams, both in January, but also looking forward to Year 11. I'd also like you to utilize the Q&A. If you do have any questions, please add a question to the Q&A. And I will also ensure this recording is sent out to you and also available on the website for you to look back over in the coming days. Thank you very much for your time this evening. I hope that was useful. Have a lovely, lovely rest of the Tuesday evening, and we look forward to seeing your son and daughter in school with us again tomorrow.